How's it going, everyone? Data here, about 24 hours after the big trade in the NHL going down between the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Flames, with Tyler Toffoli being moved to the Flames from the Canadiens in exchange for a first-round pick. We'll get into the conditions after that. A fifth-round pick, Emil Heineman, and Tyler Pitlick. So, gave myself 24 hours to think about it. You always have those quick off-the-cuff thoughts, especially with being at school. It's easy to not have the time, give myself a little bit of breathing room to try and think about it. Because honestly, right off the bat, I was not super impressed with this trade, and getting right into it right now with a quick analysis on the deal. I've been doing a lot of these data casts recently, and just as we're getting to the trade deadline, it's going to heat up even more. Was not a huge fan of this deal off the bat. As we were progressing towards a deal, as the news was coming out that something was rumbling between the Canadiens and the Flames, and Tyler Toffoli was involved, people on the radio, people in the media in Montreal, people are getting excited. There are great French-Canadian prospects on the Flames. There's Jérémy Poirier. There's Jacob Pelletier. Then you have Connor Zary. You have Matt Coronado. A lot of really good prospects. And you even have like Dustin Wolf. I don't think he was ever going to be even close to being part of this deal. Dustin Wolf could be an elite goaltender in the NHL. But just to say, there's a lot of good prospects in Calgary's system. So Canadiens fans start to get excited, saying, okay, who's coming back? Because Tyler Toffoli, we do not need to move him. He is happy to be here. He has said he's okay with being part of the rebuild, loves Caulfield, loves Suzuki, has good chemistry, has good term. There's no the onus is not on the Canadiens to move him. Yes, they're moving into a rebuild, but he's not necessarily the first piece that has to move. There's still Lehkonen, Sherratt, Petrie, a lot of guys that could move before Tyler Toffoli does. So if he's going to move, it's going to be for a good haul. So as things heated up, people are getting excited, saying which of these big names is coming back. And for it to be Emil Heineman, not necessarily a bad name, but just a name that no one was expecting. I think a lot of fans right off the bat said, wow, like this is not what we were expecting to get back. Now, getting down some of the breakdown of the deal right now. Tyler Toffoli, nothing to sneeze at for sure. Looking at the Hockey DB page right now, he's played over 600 games, has very even numbers on the goals and the assists, 370 points. He's a sniper. He was great on the Canadiens. Didn't even get to play a full 82-game season. Let me just pull out the calculator here, 52 and 37. So 89 games. So he played basically over the course of a season and a bit, scoring 70 points in 89 games. That's really nothing to sneeze at all. Extrapolating his numbers and averaging his career over an 82-game season, I believe it's 49 or 50 points a season with very, very consistent. A 50-point guy as a top six winger, that is exactly what teams need, especially when it come the trade deadline, when you're trying to go on these cup runs. But for Calgary, this is what I'm trying to get out here. For Calgary, it's even more important. For the Calgary Flames, they get Tyler Toffoli for 2 more seasons at a cap hit of $4.25 million, going into their cap situation, because the deal is not just the deal. You have to look a bit deeper into this here. The Flames are at the cap now. They're good to go. They get Tyler Toffoli for 2 more years, a top 6 winger who, by the way, let's look at the analytics here. Let's not just go by the eye test. Let's go by the analytics here. Tyler Toffoli, looking at these numbers, I know there might be a lot of numbers on the screen right now, but all this to say, he is a top 6 winger, a shoot-first top 6 winger, who is one of the best in the league at creating scoring chances for himself. As we saw last season, he's also capable of putting pucks in the net. So obviously I'm not going to break down every single one of these numbers right now, but look at these percentiles, look at the comparisons to the rest of the league as well. It's very impressive numbers. Even if you don't know what the numbers are, they're pretty good when it comes to, again, the qualification of creating scoring chances for himself. Is he a great playmaker? Is he going to be driving the offense? Maybe not. But he puts the puck in the back of the net and he drives the offense. Something that Calgary Flames need right now, because they're not a struggling team. They're doing well, one of the best lines in the NHL. But here's the problem. You have Matthew Tkachuk as an RFA. You have Johnny Gaudreau as a UFA. You have Andrew Mangiapane as an RFA. If you not only want to get insurance should they leave, you got to have something going on. But at the same time, you also need to have leverage, because if these agents come into negotiations, the agents of Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and Mangiapane, just to name those 3, if they come into negotiations saying, we could walk right now, you guys are the ones who got to pay up if you want to keep them, Now having Tyler Toffoli in your lineup, that gives you a little bit of leverage as well, saying, you know what, I'm not as desperate as I was yesterday. I now have a top 6 winger who's here to stay for at least 2 more seasons, who's happy to be here, who's friends with Milan Lucic, who signed for next season as well. That's the thing. So that may force a move to get, you got to free up some cap space. Mangiapane is not re-signing for 2.425. But if you move out Sean Monahan, if you move out Mikael Backlund, if you move out someone like that, you can now re-sign Tkachuk for the 8-9 million, Gaudreau for the 8-9 plus million, and Mangiapane for that 4-5 million. Not to mention other moves that could be made on defense with Zadorov probably moving out at 3.75, get Branson at 1.95, etc. There is no problem. They have the cap, all the pieces are in motion. All the pieces are here for the Calgary Flames to be able to re-sign their players. All they have to make is a little move right now, and it won't come at crazy costs because they got that insurance on Tyler Toffoli, who also serves as leverage. Going back the other way, the Flames lose their first round pick. They still have 2 seconds, but no third, no fourth, no sixth. So 2022 draft, they picked twice in the second round, once in the fifth, once in the seventh. Next year, they already don't have their fifth. So obviously they're going not all in, but they're starting to make a push right now. And they're definitely, I don't know, I don't want to call them Stanley Cup contenders just from adding Tyler Toffoli, but I think they're definitely contenders to do something in the West. I'll just keep it at that for the moment. And at the same time, they did not have to give up any of their big pieces. Again, looking at the non-roster here, these are just signed players. Zary, Pelletier, Poirier, but even Matt Coronado, other players that may not be crazy, but I don't know, that they have something going on with them. Emilio Pettersson, Valimaki, who's 23 years old, a young defenseman. Definitely not a huge deal for them to lose out on a prospect they didn't even draft. Emil Heineman, the prospect that they got from Florida as part of the Sam Bennett trade in April of last year. So do they lose a prospect? Absolutely, but it's not someone that they necessarily had super high up, who they spent a draft pick on, etc. They still have a second from Florida in this upcoming draft. And Sam Bennett definitely hurts because he wasn't doing much for them, but he's been going off with Florida, 45 points in 47 games. But just to say, they take that pick that they got, that prospect they got from that trade, and they get to flip it into Tyler Toffoli, which makes them feel a little bit better as well about the Sam Bennett deal. Now, Emil Heineman, I've been seeing a lot of different comparisons about him. You never really want to judge too early. I did put out a tweet that, yes, I'm not a big fan of this deal, but at the same time, you have to agree. Marco D'Amico here, as he says, in 2016, Canadiens fans were mad that the haul for Weiss and Fleischmann was only Danault, a prospect who was whatever, a two-way kind of guy, and the second and the 2 drafts from now, pathetic. That second turns into Alexander Romanov, and Danault turns into a major, if not one of the biggest, with Carey Price, reasons why they make it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. So right now, I couldn't agree more. The Habs could have or should have gotten more for Toffoli given the market, but who knows what the future will hold. You cannot lose sleep over it just yet. So I will say, at this moment, I do not think it was the biggest haul, especially considering the term for Tyler Toffoli and his ability and the position that the Flames were in. They were more desperate than the Canadiens were to move Toffoli. I think that they could have gotten more. Now, if Heineman becomes a good player and the pick turns into something great, of course, no problem. I'm not going to complain about that moving on. I'm just saying, as of right now, with much of the deal to be figured out later, I still give it to the Flames at the moment. So as I said, Tyler Toffoli was okay with staying through a rebuild, had good chemistry, top 6 winger with term. Of course, we have no idea what Heineman will turn into, but to move Toffoli and not take back any of those other names. Additionally, this is the return you get for a rental. We've seen in the past at trade deadlines that players like this, top 6 players, go for a first and a prospect, basically. That's the price. Calgary has both Gaudreau and Mangiapane, even Tkachuk, forgot to mention on the expiring deals, and they just got themselves a top 6 winger for 2 more seasons without dropping any of its biggest names or assets. I'll be very curious to see how the first pans out. So Emil Heineman, I've seen comparisons. I've seen some to Anthony Cirelli. I've seen some to Arturi Lehkonen in his work ethic. The Canadiens are very high on him. Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon both really wanted him. He's done well in the Swedish league here, scoring 11 goals in 36 games. He's one of the top scorers on the team, I believe. Yeah, he's tied for second in team scoring, despite playing like 3rd, 4th, bottom 6 minutes and being a 20-year-old in a men's league. So nothing to sneeze at there. He's a hard worker, but I do see him as more of a middle 6 guy. I don't know, like maybe something between the Lehkonen and the Cirelli. Maybe something like an Armia. I don't know. Like, we're not quite at the top 6 potential that Cirelli has shown himself to have, but so hard to judge when I've seen like just a few highlights of this guy. All that just to say, it wasn't the biggest prospect possible. If he turns into something great, are we going to whine about it? No, of course not. And hopefully that first round pick, it is top 10 protected. If you get into the details now of that trade. That first round pick in 2022 is top 10 protected if the Flames are to miss the playoffs and then win the draft lottery. It would then become a 2023 first and a 2024 fourth if that were to happen, as well as a 2024 fifth round pick, so that's a bit down the road, as well as getting Tyler Pitlick. Tyler Pitlick, more of a toss-in just for the roster spots and for the salary cap. At the same time, it's still a player that the Canadiens need. They could use a little bit of, Rem Pitlick's been good in that lineup, so if they can get another forward that can contribute to the games not being 7-1 blowouts, then for sure. Do I think Tyler Pitlick's going to be coming back next season? Probably not. The whole family's here, but I don't know if I see them keeping all the Pitlicks. Depends on the direction the Canadiens are going in next season. But what's interesting now is that with Toffoli moving, it does open the door to a lot now, because we knew Sherratt, Lehkonen, maybe Petrie were the ones on the way out, but now with Tyler Toffoli, a winger with term, who was happy to stay here no less. So much so that his wife was even crying when talking to the media about having to leave Montreal, and how he has loved every second of being here, and his wife's upset. And, I can't wait for the future for this team, Cole and Nick. This was a horrible losing team. This is one of the worst Habs teams in franchise history. First losing streak of 10 games since 1926, and he still loved every second of it. Now, is he just saying that because he's happy? Yeah, maybe. But I'm just to say, there have been a lot of players who have moved off horrible teams and didn't have this many nice things to say about the team, the culture, the city, and the players. Keep that in mind. But so now it opens the door. Is Mike Hoffman maybe someone who's on the way out? Is, I don't know, someone else who has term? Joel Armia maybe someone who is on the way out. Jonathan Drouin, maybe. But this is going to be difficult because these price tags for guys like Drouin and Armia, they're at all-time lows. So how desperate are the Canadiens really to move out those players and bring back some picks? It really depends how all in they're going for with this rebuild. This Tyler Toffoli deal seems to say that they're going quite in. And now on the Canadian side, don't forget about guys like Brendan Gallagher, what's going to be up with him. Lehkonen's probably on his way out. Cedric Paquette. I could see this deadline for the Canadiens being similar to a couple of years ago where, Cousins for a pick, bang. Nate Thompson for a pick, bang. Jordan Wheel for a pick, bang. Little things like that, 6th, 7th round picks. I could see Cedric Paquette and Laurent Dauphin and guys like that being moved. Maybe Brett Kulak, but I'm a fan of Brett Kulak, I have to say. But the whole team's on expiring deals. This team can look very different next season. Look at all of these players on UFA or RFA expiration status at the end of this season. That's pretty wild, I do have to say. And there's a lot of players who are injured as well, we have to note. Next season's going to look different also because of all the players from injury coming back. Edmondson, Savard, Dvorak are going to get lots more playing time. But just to say as well with the picks now, Montreal lost their first to the Coyotes, but they get Calgary's first, they get Carolina's first, likely 2 mid to late first round picks. But fans are saying, why couldn't the Canadiens get Zary or Pelletier? Well, those were late first round picks. Those were guys who were drafted in the mid-20s. So a mid-20s first round pick is nothing to sneeze at. 2 seconds, 3 thirds, 2 fourths, a fifth, a sixth, and 2 sevenths. This should be a very good draft for this new organizational leadership, for this new organization's leadership, who are going to be looking to bring in, I guess, a kind of new class of player, potentially headlined at the moment by Emil Heineman, the type of player that he is. But again, who's going to be signed on for that rebuild? Tyler Toffoli was someone who was on board for that rebuild. Is Mike Hoffman on board for 2 more years of that? Is Brendan Gallagher happy to stay, potentially donning the captaincy once Shea Weber fully is out of the picture? That's going to be tough. But the Canadiens do have the money for sure. Once a lot of this money is off, and if Shea Weber retires, it's going to be a very different situation. It's so odd that the Canadiens are the worst team in hockey, yet they're almost $12 million over the salary cap. It's a very odd team. They'll be trying to get to the cap floor, I think, by next season, with all of this money that's going to be expiring, depending on who stays and who goes. But maybe that's a bit extreme, the cap floor, but they definitely won't be going $12 million over the salary cap, or even too close to the salary cap, I would think, in my mind. But that's what I have to say about this deal. Tyler Toffoli, elite player, and the Flames got him for the price of a rental. When I look at last season's trade deadline, you have Nick Foligno, who got traded for a first, a fourth, and then there's a retained salary. So very similar price. Nick Foligno, I wouldn't say is at the level of Tyler Toffoli, minus the prospect. The first to fifth and prospect, Foligno went for a first and a fourth, so not the craziest difference in value. Then even have like a guy like Blake Coleman, I was just thinking about. He got traded from the Devils to the Lightning for Nolan Foote and a first-round pick that became, of course, everyone's favorite prospect with a very difficult name, Shakir Mukhamadullin, I hope, the 20th overall pick, who's doing well in the KHL, who was a pick out of left field. But just to say, a first and a prospect. Nolan Foote was not a nothing prospect. 27th overall pick, doing quite well in the AHL this season. So that's the price for Blake Coleman, who stays for 9 games, plays one more season of 31 points in 55 games, gets his 2 cup rings. That's 1 year of term. A former first round pick and another first round pick. Tyler Toffoli is a guy who has 2 years left at a good price, and all those things I mentioned earlier about the leverage and the insurance. So it's interesting. The market, I would assume people were saying that Sherrod was going to go for a first round pick, Lehkonen maybe for a second round pick and more. This sets the bar. I don't know if things are going to change by the trade deadline, but I think Canadiens fans are going to be upset in a month's time when players who are on these expiring deals and who may not be perceived to be as good as Tyler Toffoli are going for bigger price tags. I think that's where fans are going to get upset. Again, that'll be probably temporary as the first round pick turns into a prospect in 3-4 years and Heineman comes into the team and he's a big guy. He's a big Swede who has a great work ethic. That's going to be great. But at the moment, I do feel like it's a bit underwhelming. Of course, we come back to this video in 3 years and we laugh about it maybe, but those are just the thoughts at the moment. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I'll stop talking. That's what I think about the Tyler Toffoli trade to the Calgary Flames in exchange for that first, the fifth, Pitlick, and Emil Heineman. If you were curious about Tyler Pitlick's numbers, I didn't bring them up, but I should just make note of them. He's not a nothing throwaway guy, but 2 assists in 25 games. I don't think he's really a huge part of the deal. It's more the salary cap, to make the salary cap work. Plus now he's with the Pitlick family and all the clan. But I digress. Love to hear your thoughts on all this down here in the YouTube comments or even on the Discord server, link in the description. Who won this trade and why? Do you need to wait to make a final verdict? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this deal. What you think about my thoughts as well. DataCasts have been fun. I look forward to doing more of these heading into closer to the trade deadline as well. So thank you for taking the time to listen. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and if you would like to hear more and see more content here on the channel, including more DataCasts and podcast type things, NHL 22 franchise mode, FIFA 22 career mode, and more, we would love to have you. Feel free to subscribe. It won't hurt, and we would love to have you join the community on this channel. So once again, thanks for taking the time to listen, and I look forward to reading your thoughts and seeing you in the next one.